Alright, so welcome to the 6th video in this series on harmony. In our last video, we covered hybrid chords, what they are, how they are made, and most importantly, how we can use them within functional harmony and voice leading. In this video, we're going to finally take our very first look at a type of non-functional harmony. Specifically, we'll discuss tertiary harmony, what it is, why it's so popular in film music, and how you can use it in your own music. So with that, let's get started. As I mentioned earlier, this is our first video on non-functional harmony. So I should probably start off by explaining what exactly non-functional harmony is in the first place. So, non-functional harmony is a blanket term applied to any approach to harmonizing music that doesn't focus on remaining in a diatonic key. In other words, we're dealing with a type of chromatic harmony that doesn't divide chords into functional families of tonic, subdominant, and dominant. Now, there are many different approaches that you can take with non-functional harmony, and each one has its own set of rules and guidelines that need to be observed. Of these many different types, however, tertiary harmony is by far the most popular and frequently used in film music. In fact, you could actually argue that tertiary harmony is more common in most modern film music than functional harmony is. Now, tertiary harmony actually has a few different names. You might be more familiar with the term chromatic medians. Or, if you're a film music nerd, you may have heard of the Herrmann effect, named after the legendary composer Bernard Herrmann, who is often credited as the reason why this type of harmony is so popular and emblematic of film music in the first place. But none of this actually answers the question of what is tertiary harmony. Putting it simply, tertiary harmony is just the practice of moving chords up or down by thirds, regardless of whether or not they belong in the same key together. For example, here is an example of a chord progression written using minor triads and tertiary harmony. And here is an example of a chord progression written using major triads and tertiary harmony. Now, what makes tertiary harmony so useful is that it makes for a particularly dramatic and useful sound that is perfect for film music. It allows for heavier use of chromaticism in your music while maintaining common tones between each chord to help keep things sounding smooth. Now, there are many different approaches that you can take to using tertiary harmony, but for now, let's stick with the most basic and common one. First things first, we need to pick which type of chords we'll be working with. The grand majority of all tertian progressions tend to stick to either all major triads or all minor triads. As a general rule, if you work with minor triads, your harmony will tend to sound dark and moody. But if you work with major triads, your harmony will sound more dramatic in a more awe-inspiring kind of way. Next, we want to figure out which direction we want to move our chords in. By definition, we know that tertiary harmony includes chords that are an interval of a third apart from each other. And similar to how most progressions stick with just one chord type, most tertiary progressions also move the roots of these chords in just one direction, either up in pitch or down. Personally, I prefer to move down for reasons that I will explain in just a bit. First, however, let's start writing a chord progression. I'll start with C major and move down in pitch from there. So we have C major, and we want to move down by a third. That means we can choose either A flat major, which is a major third lower, or A major, which is a minor third lower. I'm going to go with A flat major. Then let's go with F major, which is a minor third lower, and finally D major, which is another minor third lower. That's it! Writing tertian harmonies is quite simple and straightforward at their most basic level. But, real quick, I want you to notice something. If we look at each of these chords more carefully, we'll notice that each of them actually contains the pitch C, which was the root of our very first chord. This was actually by design on my part, and is also the reason why I prefer to work with tertian chords that move down by a third, more so than up in pitch. Allow me to explain why. Since tertiary harmony is, by definition, a type of non-functional harmony, it means that we cannot rely on any chord functions to help us establish a tonal center in our music. Instead, we have to rely on just sheer repetition. In this example, I decided that C was going to be my tonal center for the chord progression, so I made sure to repeat it in almost every single chord. This is why I said moving chords down by thirds is easier, because you can stick to normal triads while still making use of the tonal center of the first chord. Now, not every chord needs to repeat your tonic note. However, you do need to repeat it just frequently enough throughout your music that you are still able to anchor your music into a tonal sound. Other common strategies would include using a pedal tone or drones in your music that just perform the tonic nearly constantly, or repeating the tonic frequently in the melody or countermelody. The point is that if you aren't conscious about where your music's tonal center is whenever you're using non-functional harmony, you run the risk of accidentally running into the realm of atonal music, which is a topic for another video. So whatever you do, just make sure that your tonal center is included in at least the first chord of your progression, and preferably the last one as well. But the more you can use it, the better. And that's it for our basic approach. There's nothing you need to worry too much about in regards to voice leading. Our original approach should still work just fine as long as you stick to these guidelines. Now, as a final tip before we dive into an example in Cubase, if you wanted to make things a little more complicated, which you certainly can, you can try shifting things up by using a more chord relationship heavy approach to your chord choices. If you're interested in what chord relationships are or aren't familiar with the topic, I have a video on this very same subject, and I'm going to put a tag for it here, and you can click on that and watch it later. In this case, I have a few basic descriptions that you can use. At any time a minor triad moves to another minor triad by way of a minor third interval, you'll get a fairly ominous and otherworldly type sound. If you separate two minor triads by a major third interval, you'll have an ominous and slightly darker sound. Now, two major triads connected by a minor third interval will sound distinctly dramatic and heroic, while a major third will make the two major triads sound more fantasy-based. Shifting things up even further, a major triad connected to a minor triad by a minor third interval will sound tense and mysterious, while reversing it will create a feeling of tension and rising action. Finally, a major and minor triad connected by a major third interval will sound just incredibly sad, while reversing it creates more of a sense of mystery. Now, you can use any of these when writing your own tertiary harmonies, but I recommend sticking to the basics as much as you can, and using these types of shifts only sparingly when you really want to emphasize a specific idea in the story. So, now that we've got that figured out, let's try making a chord progression in Cubase.
Alright, so let's do this. So tertiary harmony is very simple. First, let's pick a major or minor triad. We did major in the earlier example, so let's try minor. Just go A minor to keep things easy to start with. And earlier I mentioned that I prefer to go down in pitch. But for now, just to be, just to see both sides of this coin, let's do moving up. So all I'm going to do, copy and paste my chord. I can either move up by a minor third or by a major third. So right now I have to decide whether I want that E or that C to be my common chord. And I'm not quite sure which I want yet, so I'm going to show you a little trick here. We're going to do 2 at the same time. If we go up by 3, and then go up by 3 here, or 4, I can see what chords I have available here. I want to try and see if there's a way for me to get that A. So if I go by a minor third in both, I don't get it. If I go up by a major third, do I get it? No, don't get it. So let's see here. Let's go down here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, still not going to get it. Oh, so there's no need to worry about it too much. Let's just go with that, though. Get up there. 3 and 4. There we go. And so if I go by 4, we just end up back at our tonic chord again, A minor. All right, so let's give this a quick listen to. All right, and this is still on spiccato. Let's do long pitches with our expression map down there. All right, why did that not work? There we go, let's try it there. There we go. Very nice. All right, so that works. Now let's voice lead. So as you can see, these are pretty straightforward, really. Tertiary harmony or tertian harmony, chromatic medians, Hermann chords, whatever you want to call them. They're all fairly simple. So we're just going to voice lead. This is looking pretty good. Let's see, A, and then the next one we went up was C sharp, then it was F, then A again. So let's put it there, do our bass line. Let's see, moving up, let's see, let's try moving that one up. There we go. See? Simple enough. It's tertiary harmony really can be incredibly easy. Very simple, but wonderfully effective. All right, now, before I wrap up the video, I did want to show you one other thing. So we did decide, or I decided, that I wanted A to be the tonic. So another strategy I could do is to just hold A out underneath the entire thing. This is called a drone or a pedal tone. Let's see how this would sound. Definitely a very different vibe. Let's try it instead of the bass line. Actually, you know what? Let's try this. We'll keep the bass line there and just keep a quiet little drone up here. Let's move the velocity down on that to make it quieter. Ooh, so yeah, I like that a lot better. But that's just another option you can have because, again, remember, we don't have functional families here in these chords. And so you need to make sure that whatever your tonal center is, which I chose A, you want to use it at least in your very first chord, preferably in your last as well if possible. Bass line, it's nice and present. And then you can also use tones, drones like this. If I were to chop it up and make it more rhythmic, that could also be a pedal tone. There's all kinds of things that you can try. I could write a melody that uses the A pitch a lot, counter melody that does the same. Really, sky's the limit. You could do whatever you wanted, but it is just something to be aware of.
And with that, we've reached the end of another video. I hope it was helpful. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel and share it with anyone you think might find it helpful. I want to give a quick thank you to my amazing patrons for their support of this channel. I appreciate each and every one of you. I also want to say thank you to each of you who are watching these videos. Your wonderful comments, messages, and emails just mean the world to me, and I am beyond grateful to be able to help so many of you understand more about music and how you can write your own. So, in the meantime, keep studying, keep working hard, and as always, keep writing new music.